Great to see you here this morning. And this is the first of our morning classes, which I was hoping to do. As I said a few moments ago, I have got so much that I want to share with you folk. And I've thought, well, I'll just add some more classes in. And that's why we're starting here on the Tuesday morning. But there's even more. And sometimes I think to myself, and Peter just said to me, how much you've been learning over the years and years to get this information together in your mind, and now you've got to give it out. And it's sort of, I've got a lot that I can give out, but there's all of a sudden I think, I've got to tell them about this, I've got to tell them about that. But today's class is going to be in two segments. I'm going to just talk to you about the fungal link first, fungal disease link, and then I'm going to show you how to do a sourdough gluten-free flatbread. But I'm going to do that like in the second part of the talk this morning. So, getting back to this one here. Now, our classes over the past, since the beginning of the year, when I started off, I initially did those 4 first classes, which were more on remedies. Then I branched out and I wanted to share with you the program which we talk about the fundamental laws of health, the 8 laws of health, and you can remember them by spelling out the word New Start. Nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. And you, by following all of these are what you're going to bring you health. These are where the health is. Don't kid yourself. You cannot minimize any of these. They are so simple, yet so profound. So simple. You can't do away. And they tell you to stay out of the sunlight. But guess what? We need sunlight. They tell you all these sorts of things. But look, we need exercise, we need water. And we can go on. But if you want to see that one, hopefully that's online. And in the 8 Laws of Health one, under the 8 Laws of Health one. And basically, the diet that I'm promoting is a whole food, plant-based. That's where I'm coming from, whole food, plant-based diet. Some people might say it's a vegan, vegetarian, which really it is, and I'm not going to play with words. It is a vegan, vegetarian diet. But to be technical, I can be a vegan, vegetarian, and I can eat chips, and I can eat donuts, and I can eat all sorts of wrong food. So it is a little bit more correct to say I want to follow a whole food, plant-based diet. So I'm not talking about refined foods. And so if you get into whole foods, and I try as much as I can to eat a whole food, plant-based diet. We also have already done this one on the China study, which talked about Dr. Colin Campbell and how he had a search for, he was asked to find the cause of cancer, and he did. And he said it was animal protein. And so that's why vegetarians do have an advantage. So you can find that online too. There's a whole program on there on the vegetarian advantage or the China study. Next Sunday, this coming Sunday, I'm going to do another talk, and it's called Excitotoxins, the Taste That Kills. That's another very good one. And what is it? These are the additives that they're putting into our foods that are making so many people sick. What are they doing to us? Well, you'll find out on Sunday. Okay, and today's talk is going to be on the fungal disease link. Okay, fungal disease link. At home, I have some books I was given these, or I bought the books. I was shown this book, first of all, by a friend. Maybe some of you may have heard her, and I'm going to share with you, if you haven't found the YouTube clips of Barbara O'Neill online, it is worthwhile. Barbara O'Neill check her out. She's a good friend of mine, and she was the one who taught me all about the fungal disease link. And this one here was with, and she told me the book, Doug Kaufman. This is the Fungus Link 1, and I also got the Fungus Link 2, and also another one called What Makes Bread Rise. And it's yeast. It's the yeast product, okay? And what are we just going to, and this is where I want to talk to you today about the link of what fungus does to our health. Pollutants, chemicals, pesticides suppress and break down our immune systems, and we know fungus affects people with compromised immune system. So most people have got compromised immune systems now. But antibiotics are fungal mycotoxins, which are poisons. Chronic illness has a primary fungal link to diseases, and most people are not realizing that. Most people have no idea that. And all of this whole program is based from those books by Doug Kaufman, by the Fungus Link 1 and 2. Very interesting research that he's got on there. Okay, but this here, it says by the Fungus Link by Doug Kaufman, page 29. As far as 20th century fungal experts, consider Dr. Leda Mattman, a professor emeritus at Wayne State University. In her excellent book, Stealth Pathogens, Dr. Mattman asks, are fungi in blood smears overlooked because they are confused with blood cells? She answers with a resounding yes. From that one statement alone, just imagine how many blood conditions are misdiagnosed because machines and laboratory technologists can't differentiate between spores and cells. Now, this blew me away when I first heard that. I sort of thought to myself, surely people who are trained in examining blood would know what to look for. But this lady, she's the professor emeritus, and she says, no, you don't. You can't. Okay, another statement on the same page by Dr. Rinaldi says, given the right immunocompromised host, virtually any fungus can kill a human being. That's something else. Very something else. And I want to share with you this morning some way fungal toxins affect our health. Now, the first one we're going to look at is arthritis. The ways fungi direct arthritis are twofold: by infecting the joint directly via the bloodstream, or by affecting the joints through the fungal poisons, mycotoxins that are given off. Remember, these fungus in our body or wherever they are, they give off waste. They're called microtoxins. So those mycotoxins can make us incredibly sick. Okay, so Dr. Constantini, a retired head of the World Health Organization, refers to the uric acid which forms crystals in the joints known as gout. He believes that the uric acid in the bloodstream is more likely to be of a fungal origin and is a result of fungus entering the body from outside. And his work also found that mycotoxins caused rheumatoid arthritis. Now, who's telling these people who have got these, rheumatoid arthritis and their hands are all disfigured, that it is a fungal toxin? Now, that's one thing that you can know how it affects us, through arthritis. Digestion. Now, this is a big one because so many people's digestions we've got problems with digestion. Often, the intestinal tract is the first tissues damaged by activated yeasts and fungus. Molds and mycotoxins occur in our food supply, often activated by antibiotics. And it's true, antibiotics are the source. Well, they can be yes, they've saved a lot of lives. They've also caused us a lot of other problems. and can make our lives miserable with symptoms of bloating, burping, intestinal gas, diarrhea, indigestion and reflux. Once the fungi escape into the intestines via a leaky gut, they cause a problem characterized by the inability of the intestines to prevent the leakage of large particles through the intestinal walls into the general blood circulation. How many people have got leaky gut? You stop and think. Many people we know have got intestinal problems caused by leaky gut. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the talk we have when we're going to talk about gluten and genetically modified organisms and Roundup and all those things. That's a different talk. But Crohn's disease and irritable bowel syndrome are both serious intestinal disorders where sections of the intestinal tract become inflamed, thickened and ulcerated. Many people have found significant relief when they address the underlying fungal conditions. Now, studies in the medical journal The Lancet show that 75% of children of mothers that had measles in their pregnancy developed severe Crohn's disease later in their life. Yeah, and this has happened years ago when your mother was pregnant with you, and you don't even put it back to, that's why I've got all these problems in my life. In every case, recurrent antibiotic-resistant pneumonia preceded the Crohn's symptoms. Other scientists have found that carbohydrates can be a possible culprit. 2 out of 3 worldwide studies found that those with higher intakes of carbohydrates developed more irritable bowel than those who did not have high carbohydrate intake. And you stop and think what most people are eating now. Pizzas and bread and pasta and all that sort of thing. And they're not realising that that's a high a carbohydrate diet. They don't realise that. And that's just exacerbating it. Now, Dr. Constantini found that people with Crohn's often have aflatoxin, a fungal toxin, in their blood. Patients showed incredible improvement when they followed yeast-free, grain-free, low-carbohydrate diet and avoided baker's and brewer's yeast. Now, that's for digestion. Then we've got the asthma attack. Is asthma linked to fungal overgrowth? Candida albicans, a fungal growth, can get out of control in the intestines through the intake of foods that are high in sugar. From there, the fungus can invade the bloodstream and is able to gain access to the lungs. So, who's telling all these mothers with their children who've got asthma to get their kids off sugars? You know, it's just not being told to them. Once it is there, chemicals inhaled or environmental dust breathed in can irritate the bronchial linings in the lungs and can trigger wheezing and bronchial spasms. And these environmental dust particles contain mold and fungal mycotoxins. And often the patient has both asthma and allergies, and the allergies can trigger the asthma or can cause the sniffles or congestion. Now, my mother, or Nola, my sister Nola, we have a mother who's since passed away, but she died having an asthma attack. She was a severe asthmatic. And this is going back in the 80s when she died. But when we look back in her life, she was just so exposed to environmental toxins and like allergens and mold and fungus. We just knew it when we looked at her lifestyle, when we looked back over her lifestyle. And we think and remember when she used to get a lot better when we'd go in and we'd do a real deep clean in her bedroom. We'd go in and say, because she wasn't unable to do it because she wasn't well enough those years, but we'd go in there and we'd do a deep clean in her bedroom and she'd be much better for quite a while after that. You'd wipe everything down and you'd do a really good dust and everything. But once again, it came back because we know now it was an allergen. It was like a mold, fungus mold. And it was really interesting because when she died, she stayed as a guest with somebody. Dad and Mum were travelling somewhere. And Dad came back home, this is years later, and he was reflecting on Mum's death, and he was just saying to me, and he said to me, you know what, I know, when we got into that room where we stayed, it had been locked up, had a musty sort of smell, and Dad said it was a musty room, and it hadn't been opened up, and she just, it was enough to kill her. It was really, literally did kill her. And he said, yeah, it was the mold and the fungus. And he agreed with me. And we knew that when we think back and we looked and reflected back on her life. And we didn't know this years ago when she was alive. It's just now. You just wish you didn't know all this. That's in hindsight. Such an invaluable thing, isn't it, hindsight? But it is known that fungus can cause an allergic reaction to the lungs, but it can colonize the lungs and produce an inflammatory reaction to the infection. If fungal infection can contribute to asthma, why not treat asthma as if it was a fungal disease? Now, I do know and I understand, I talked to you that fungal asthma, I also believe, has got it's also a sign of dehydration. So there's other problems in it too, and I'm not saying it's the only thing, but there are factors contributing to it. And if you take away the mold factor of it, you're going to just stop that crisis happening all the time. Another cause of asthma is reflux, which is the reflux of the acid from the stomach going up the esophagus, going back down the lungs, causing irritation of the linings of the bronchioles. And because everyone aspirates a small amount of oral secretions or stomach fluids at night, when sleeping, could it not be that the fungal spores that are contained in the acid that are causing the asthma? Mental health. Fungus is able to invade both the blood as well as any tissue of the body. In 1996, a medical textbook entitled Principles and Practice of Clinical Mycology devoted an entire chapter on fungal meningitis. Meningitis is nearly always associated with the behavioural changes. What causes the meninges to swell? Fungus. And this book implicates fungi in brain swelling. Remember that cerebral swelling can cause headaches. It's noted that some of the people who eradicate fungi from their bodies also find that their brain symptoms clear up. How often we say, oh, I've got a foggy brain. If people with phobias, fears and depression may be helped by going on an antifungal diet, would it not be worth it? And a person who has Candida may eat carbohydrates. They will ferment in the presence of microorganisms and they yield alcohol. In a study where 69% of patients consumed 50 grams of glucose, about the amount of sugar in a soft drink, they were measured to have ethanol in their bloodstream only 1 hour after ingesting the 50 grams of sugar. Yeah, it's really interesting one. I had a guy who told me, he said that he was driving along, or actually he went somewhere, and he drank 1 can of lemonade and he had a salad sandwich to eat, okay, which is a common thing for a lot of people to eat and drink. A can of lemonade and a salad sandwich. Shortly thereafter, he was pulled up by the breathalyzer, by the police who tested his blood, and he blew positive. And he had never drank any alcohol. He said that lemonade and that salad sandwich was enough to make him register on the breathalyzer. Now, I just think to myself, how many people don't realize what they're eating is causing their bodies to ferment, the food in their body to ferment. If 69% of people are fermenting in their intestines every time they eat fruit, potatoes and grains, they're getting alcohol as a byproduct in their bloodstream. And so don't forget, it just doesn't have to be sugar. It can also be fruit, potatoes and grains. This is the root problem of chronic fatigue. The body produces alcohol from the sugars and carbohydrates in the diet. And this is why it is the most important to change the diet in all those who suffer with chronic fatigue and or depression, as well as foggy memory or inability to concentrate. And I believe all of us to a lesser or a greater degree also have even some of this problem. Because I'm talking about the people that I'm mixing with, the people I'm speaking to. Many people have got foggy brain. Oh, and they say, how do I get rid of foggy brain? Well, this is some ideas for you. Okay, if you or someone you know suffers from depression, schizophrenia, obsessive-compulsive, bipolar, would it be a benefit to ask a few questions? Has the person been exposed to mold in their home or work? Have they taken antibiotics? Have they been on cortisone or the birth control pill? Do they crave sweets, pasta, bread, potatoes and sugar? And so many people do. I have particular one friend, she would say to me, she said, I am just so tired. What has happened to me? And I said, you have got a fungal overgrowth in your body. I said, but I don't eat any sugars. I said, yeah, but you eat fruit. Fruit is enough, remember? So if you've got too much fungal overgrowth in your body, even fruit will tip you over. So has a person, okay, I just read that. Cerebral health. Fungi can enter the cerebral tissues of both healthy patients and those with weakened immune systems. Must just tell you the story about my friend. She said that, and I told her that she had fungal overgrowth. And I said, okay, you check it out. And she says, all right, she's going to check it out. She ate so much fruit. She just said she overate fruit and she wanted to see what was going to do to her body. And she said it just made her so tired. She should eat and she'd go outside and she just couldn't stop. She'd fall asleep everywhere. She would be sitting. It doesn't matter what she was doing. She was just excessively tired. Like they call it chronic fatigue. Remember? Okay, and so what I said, okay, now, you've got to flip it around. Cut that sugar, cut those sweets, cut all those fruits. And guess what? She said it went away. She said she never had that obsessive tiredness. And it was an obsession. It was a tiredness, great tiredness. And so I thought to myself, it proved to me, with her, and it proved to her as well, that she needed to know and experience this, that it was actually an overgrowth of fungus in her body that was causing it. And it wasn't just done by having sugars, because she wasn't having any sugar. She was having lots of fruit. The most common cause of fungal meningitis, defined as infection of the lining of the brain spinal cord, is Cryptococcus. Candida albicans causes brain abscesses. And so there are 200 known fungi known to be harmful to humans and can cause diseases such as depression, multiple sclerosis, hyperactivity, Parkinson's diseases and seizures. And yet they are diagnosed, but they are just caused from a fungal overgrowth. Skin disorders. Many associate dermatological problems with food allergies, but rarely are they associated with fungus. An organism called a fungus called tryptophan causes skin infections in humans. We know that. We've heard about ringworm and jock itch and toenail fungus and athlete's foots and nappy rash, psoriasis, acne, hives, eczema, all have a fungal condition. And that's why most people find it very difficult and they can't. Very hard to get rid of psoriasis. Fungal connection. Once you get the fungal connection with it and you realise, all of a sudden your life will change. Once you can switch and you realise, there's a connection there. I've got to stop eating so much fruit. They are usually caused by high refined carbohydrates. And sometimes it's just not always refined, because when I did it, I wasn't eating refined carbohydrates. When I first switched over, my diet changed probably about 40 years ago. I became a vegetarian. Then I became a vegan vegetarian, but I was still eating more grains than I should be. I realise that now. But in the last, say, 10 years, I have switched over probably, actually, I think even a little bit longer. And it was Barbara O'Neill, we were talking about it, and she says, change from all your porridge and all your grains for breakfast, switch them to your lentils, go into your lentils. And once I did that, all of a sudden there was like a complete different change in my thinking. All of a sudden I got rid of those excess, and the grains were good for me. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the grains, there's nothing wrong with porridge, there's nothing wrong with some of these things, but I didn't realise that I had an allergy to gluten. I didn't know it, and that's what it was that triggered it for me. But now, and once I did that and I substituted and I changed and I put a lot more higher lentils and higher beans and all those things, and all of a sudden it all fell into place. Heart health, sedentary lifestyle, smoking diet, all contribute to heart disease. But what about elevated serum levels of cholesterol? Now, Professor Constantini, the retired head of World Health Organization, collaborating Centre for Microtoxins in Food, took 18 years of his life and at his own expense, without the funding of any pharmaceutical companies, researched every article on fungi, mycotoxins and their relation to coronary artery disease. And he states there is a known cause of atherosclerosis, and that cause is fungi and their mycotoxins. Now, who's telling the people out there, if you've got problems with your heart, you must watch your fungal toxins? Nobody. Nobody is talking about it. And I take note of this guy. If he's taking 18 years out of his life and funding his own research, he's obviously, and I've listened to him, very highly intelligent fellow who's a lot of the research he's putting out, very interesting research he puts out. He shows that the food relation to the cause of coronary artery disease, but it is only food that is contaminated with fungi and the mycotoxins they produce. And the evidence is overwhelming. Constantini explained how fungal toxins in the bloodstream caused elevated blood cholesterol. And cholesterol binds the harmful fungal toxins, rendering them less harmful. So if you rid your body of fungus, your body will not produce excess cholesterol. And how often people say to me, and they say, oh, look, how do we get, so-and-so has got, they can't seem to get their cholesterol level down. Guess what? They're not looking at their fungal toxins. Just remember that. They go hand in hand. So you need to bring them both down. Or you bring your cholesterol down by bringing your fungal overload down. Once you see it, it becomes much clearer with you and you realise, I've got to start changing your diet. It's what you're eating. Okay, and this is why those who keep fit and are active do not have the same concern as those who are inactive or sick. And yet, isn't this the diet that most people out there are eating? High fat, high carbohydrate diets that are common today and are the most harmful to your body. What about allergies? Okay, allergies may be triggered by food, animal hair, pollen, dusts and molds, and often with allergies states that certain weather conditions exaggerate their symptoms, and whether it's humid, raining or winding, these are perfect conditions for distributing mold spores. And then the sinuses, which I know for me, my sinuses are often affected by mold and fungus, and I say to Peter, oh, guess what, we've been eating too much fruit. Let's get off the fruit for a while. Especially in the summer when you've got a vegetable garden and a fruit orchard or whatever, or somebody gives you a bag of persimmons or something like that, and you think, oh, I just feel like I want to eat them, but, there's just too much to tip you over or whatever. Okay, when the sinus cavities get infected, they become swollen. This places pressure on the nerves. It's adjacent to the nasal area, and the germs that cause this infection needs to be eradicated. And antibiotics are routinely used to fight sinus infections, but in reality, these compound the problems. In 1999, the Mayo Clinic announced that 95% of patients with sinusitis suffered from a fungal infection, not a bacterial one. Okay, and then we know women's yeast-related problems. Okay, not all women's health problems are generated by yeast or fungus, but we need to look at the many ways yeast can affect women. Okay, most are aware of Candida albicans, but they don't know that fungal spores can gain access to a woman through a number of different ways: through the bloodstream, through sexual transmission, via inhalation. The use of antibiotics and prescription hormones include steroids such as cortisone, prednisone, and birth control pill. And he also believes that men who drink alcohol maintain a skin fungal condition that can be transmitted during sexual intercourse. So when on the male skin, these fungi remain dormant. When combined within the women's reproductive tract, the heat activates and multiplies the fungi. And these then can cause problems such as endometriosis, vaginal yeast, painful intercourse, infertility, miscarriage, menstrual problems, false pap smears, lumps, cysts, and bladder infections. And once the fungus has been activated in the female, the male is vulnerable to infection, not only on the skin, but within the urethra and the male reproductive tract. The urethra of the male passes directly through the prostate. Fungal prostatitis has been reported in numerous scientific journals. Okay, so if we consider that only just the Candida species of molds gives off over 100 powerful toxins, we need to be concerned. But some of these toxins may attack nervous tissues, some muscle, others attack connective tissue, such as bone and joint tissues. So we can see that the symptoms may widely vary and the toxins may affect any organ, but they work in the area where our defense is compromised. Yes. And remember, when these yeasts are not the problem, they are just doing their job. You see, we have yeasts in our body. It's there. They're there as a clean-up mechanism. Like parasites, they're there. They're our body's mechanisms to clean up. There's one of my talks on parasites. We're talking about heavy metals. Parasites are actually there to contain the heavy metals so that our bodies, that we stay alive. They're the last resort to keep us alive. Okay, remember that these yeasts are not the problem. They are just doing their job in the cleaning up wastes within our body. Where the problem really lies is when the system gets out of balance in our bodies through stress, antibiotics, exposure, high sugar diet, injury, chemical exposure, etc. Then these toxins become our enemy rather than our friend. Okay, and we know that it's found that fungus affects the prostate, the testes, the bladder, the kidneys, and the skin of the male GU tract. Okay, and we've talked a little bit there, but you can also have, the men can be affected. Their prostate can be affected from the very same reals. Some of the invading spores affect the prostate or the epididymis adjacent to the testicles, causing it to become inflamed. And such conditions are called prostatitis or epididymitis. Okay, yes, and the usual treatment for the GU tract in problems is antibiotics, but this could be very likely increase the fungal infection. Zinc supplements have been found to decrease the risk of prostate problems. And remember they said to men, you got problems in your prostate, get onto zinc. One of the best things you can do for your man is to make sure every day he has a handful of pumpkin seeds. There's your zinc in your. And if you do that, like if he's in his early, maybe from some of you, your men will be maybe in their 40s. If they're in their 40s, you give them a handful of pumpkin seeds every day in their life. By the time they're 60, they're not going to have any of this problem. Problem is that we've left it. Some of us have left it too late, and you've got to do a hurried. You've got to get a little bit of help to repair all this damage. Okay, Wake Forest University cancer researchers believe that early exposure to a mycotoxin called oxytocin may contribute to the development of testicular cancer in young males. And he goes on to say that this sometimes damages DNA in the testicles of young boys, which then somehow develops into cancer when the boys undergo hormonal changes at puberty. Dr. Schwartz also tells us that babies' exposure to mycotoxins in the womb can be minimized by the expectant mother changing her diet. Another one is pain and fungi. It has been found that consuming too much sugar will increase pain, including natural sugars such as fruits and certain carbohydrates. And I had learned this years ago. I can remember it from a friend of mine. She was a naturopath, and she was teaching people she was helping a lot of people with cancer. And one of the main cancers, she was helping people with bone cancer. Now, bone cancer is one that's got a lot of pain with it. And she said the moment she would tell the people to get off their sugars, she said that she says their pain threshold would lower. She said they could handle a lot more pain if they get off their sugars. Don't forget this sugar, but the fungus will impact on the brain and nervous system. If you experience chronic pain, back pain, arthritis, try cutting out sugars and excess carbohydrates and note the improvement. Never forget her telling me that. And she said she used to treat a lot of people who had a very severe cancer reactions, like with pain. And she said they'd always have to cut out their sugars. And remember, it's not just sugars as much as it's also your fruits. And remember, your grains actually turn to sugars in your body if you are having too many grains. Fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. While these two disorders are separate, they share many symptoms. One is the most obvious one, that you feel terrible. and it may be there's no clinical trials done to prove that there is a fungal connection or to fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, but it's proved time and time again that patients who initiate the antifungal diet have a complete and long-term recovery. So you can experiment. And for me personally, the food that triggers me mostly, I think, there's a few, and they are the foods like your grapes, your strawberries. Why strawberries? Strawberries are if you grow strawberries, they are very, very vulnerable to downy mildew. You can pick a strawberry. We'll go out into our garden. If we've had strawberries, you'll pick a strawberry in the evening and you'll bring it in and you'll just sit it on the bench, and guess what? It'll have mold there by the morning. Why? Because it is so prevalent. And you buy strawberries from wherever the strawberry farm, they are saturated with an antifungal. Why? Because they know, because you cannot grow strawberries without having an antifungal. Similar with you, have you ever grown grapes? Same thing. They are so prone to picking up downy mildew. Now, there's a lot of other fruits there too, but especially those that are very, very susceptible. And so I know for me that if I go a little bit overboard and I have a few too many grapes, which I do like, but I know that they can tip me. And all of a sudden I can have a fungal overgrowth that's a little bit out of control. And I've just got to change my whole diet and get everything back into normal. Once you get back into normal, you're fine again. But you've got to always have a little bit of an idea, not too much fruit. And it's so easy, especially if you like fruit. Okay, endocrine problems. As a pathogenic fungus invade the rest of the body via the bloodstream, it easily can impregnate our hormones-producing glands. And imagine this scenario. A splinter or a prick from a thorn leads to a fungal infection called sporotrichinosis. And this condition mimics rheumatoid arthritis, and so most doctors prescribe anti-arthritis drugs. Okay, but diabetes is another endocrine malfunction that may be linked to fungi. Diabetes did exist before antibiotics were introduced in 1949, but a mycotoxin, aflatoxin B1, has been implicated in liver cancer in humans. So this mycotoxin generates the same symptoms as diabetes, for example, high blood sugar. So once again, you've got that more coming from your fungal toxins. Hypoglycemia, when the thyroid is underactive, the adrenals get exhausted and the pancreas loses its power to regulate hormones. Could this be the root of a problem called fungus problem? Okay, yeast and fungi are different from the good bacteria that inhabit a digestive tract, and they are masters at converting our hormones. As many as 350 different hormone conversions have been attributed to them. And so you can, I'm not going to go through those there, okay? Infertility. Who's putting down fungal mycotoxins to infertility? And yet it's interesting, it's found in corn products as well as the meat of the livestock that contaminates corn. Now, do you know, like, you often find that they actually feeding a lot of the meat, they are actually feeding them antibiotics to fatten them up. And what's happening? So we're eating meat that's loaded with antibiotics, and that's causing us another problem. Ear problems. Have you ever had an ear problem where you just, it's just driving me mad, and you just know that is a fungal problem. Itching inside of your ear, it's caused from a fungus. And eyes, itchy eyes, all caused from a fungal problem. Itchy scalp. My head's just itchy. All from a fungal problem. Eye disease. Okay, I'll just skip through some of these. And one patient going through the antifungal diet has there's pterygiums, those little growths that start in the inner corner of the eye and grow out, gradually disappear. Okay, and thousands of research papers have reported that cancer patients who undergo treatments such as chemotherapy have subsequent tested positive to fungal infections. But could some of these patients have had their fungal infections before they begin their chemotherapy? Okay, so 70 years ago, Dr. Warburg was awarded for the Nobel Prize in Science for his discovery that cancer cells rapidly proliferated in the presence of fermented sugar, and ironically, so do fungi. Okay, so many will be amazed that fungi can be confused with cancer cells, but also as how cancer itself is actually a fungal mycotoxin. And the aflatoxin mycotoxins are believed to cause cancer of the liver, intestines, bladder, kidneys, adrenals, uterus, ovaries, brain, and other organisms, as well as leukemia. And there's information available on many mycotoxins that cause different forms of cancer. So you really got to watch for your food, what you're taking in, okay? Another one is autoimmune disease. I'm just going to skip through this because I don't want to get caught up too much in it. But what causes it? Geneticists have proposed for decades for every disease there consists a corresponding genetic flaw. Yet this is true, but we must ask what causes genetic flaws? Okay, it seems incredible that for over 30 years, scientists called mycotoxologists have studied the ability of these fungal toxins to alter DNA. Okay, and you just stop and think, what is it that causes bread to rise? It's yeast, isn't it? Okay, inflammation causes major role in autoimmune diseases. Inflammation is swelling. We know that yeast also makes bread swell. Connect these together and it's not hard to argue that yeast could be involved in all causes of inflammation. Obesity, there's another factor too. So and as I said to you, farmers who fatten their stock, and even the chickens. I had a friend who used to work for, I think it was Steggles, and she was telling me that, like within 12 weeks or something of the chicken coming out, and they got that fat and big that they couldn't walk properly. Why? Because they were fed with antibiotics. And yet most people have no idea, okay? I'll just skip through this. Anorexia, that's the last one too. I think this is the last one or second last one. While some grains may be contaminated with mycotoxins that cause weight gain, other grains may be contaminated with mycotoxins that do the opposite. And livestock, these group of mycotoxins cause a refusal to eat. Now, could it be, you've heard of people, there's some people who have got the opposite, anorexia. Could it be that that's triggered by fungal factor as well too? And the hair loss. Okay, it's obviously that, when you have a hair loss, especially for a woman, it's very traumatic, but could it be implicated with a fungal infection? And the way if you feel you've got a fungal infection, rinse your hair out with apple cider vinegar. Okay, now I'm going to just talk a little bit on how to conquer Candida. Starve the fungus of all sugar, including fruits. Exception, Granny Smith apples and grapefruits, and yeast spreads, soy sauce and alcohol. We did this diet quite a few years ago, And we don't need it as strict as this one, but we did the full strict diet. We called it the sledgehammer diet, the antifungal diet, where we had no fruit. The only fruit we had was, you can have Granny Smith apples and grapefruit. All the rest you can't. So if you're really in a strict diet, you may have to go that way, although for us, we were able to control it and we didn't need to go that far. But you couldn't have any food that was cooked over 2 days. Why? Because you would be surprised how much of that food is growing spores, even in your fridge. And corn and wheat grain are extremely vulnerable to fungal overgrowth when they are stored. Very, very. And peanuts. One of the worst ones that you can be eating are peanuts. Peanuts are very, very, hide a lot of fungus. So peanut butter is not your best spread to use. Almond butter is much better. Cashew butter and all those are much better. Peanut butter is way down on the list. And I know it might taste all right, but it's not the healthiest to eat. The other thing is, I spoke to you a little bit about your meat. Be careful with with the meat that is consumed. Aged cheeses and most dairy products commonly show fungal infestation when tested. And check your home for damp or mold. Now this is a great one, very, very big one, because if you have got a pipe that is leaking underneath your house, it can affect your health, and you will never get better unless you address that leaking pipe. Because those spores are everywhere. It was really interesting because years ago Peter worked as a pest controller, and he had this little light that he said you could check. You could go underneath a house and you could look and you could see all these little, you'd put this light on and all of a sudden you could see lights. There'd be, poof, 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 all everywhere. You've got these spores being given off. And we can't see them, but they're everywhere today. And we have to realise that you can make yourself and your family incredibly sick if you've got any leaking or damp or mould in your home. They actually say that the Bible says that if you've got a leaking in your mould in your home, clear it out. If it comes back, pull the house down. Get out of your house. You have to get out of it. Okay, there are some other things you can do. Garlic is excellent for it. You can take garlic, but you can't take too much garlic, because I tell you what, you can have a Herxheimer reaction too. Olive leaf extract, Portiaco, a New Zealand herb Horapito, coconut, you can take that, is highly antifungal. Grapefruit seed extract. All your legumes, particularly soy, contain antifungal properties. All your raw nuts, seeds contain antifungal properties, except peanuts and pistachios, which are particularly susceptible to fungal growth. Culinary herbs, thyme and turmeric, are particularly high in antifungal properties. Okay, and you need to restore the balance. How do you restore your balance? Well, you've got to start eating healthy foods, your cultured foods. And you can have your cultured foods, you can have sauerkraut, you can have miso, you can have tofu, tempeh, yogurt, kefir, which is another one which I've done, and I actually plan, hopefully one of the times I'll be able to share with you how to make kefir. Kefir is you can make it on different things. I've made it on soy milk, you can make it on coconut, you can make it on a few different things. Yeah, quite interesting. So it's really good to restore your balance. But your diet is very important. Now, there's another thing which I wanted to share with you too, is something that you can take to get rid of your Candida in your body, and that is pure gum turpentine. Turpentine. Now, it's in my book. If you've got my book, all of you, probably everyone here would have my book. So there's a whole section on there how to take it. Now, this is not mineral turpentine. This is not your turpentine from your... Well, this is from Bunnings. You can get this. This is where we bought it from. But when we bought it from Bunnings, it was about $11 or $12 a litre. Now it is very hard to get, and I looked on the website from Bunnings and it was, $27 a bottle. And can I tell you something? Buy it. It's soon going to be gone and you won't be able to get it. This is pure gum turpentine. This is from the turpentine tree, right? It is gum turpentine. It is not, and what we do on it, you've got this here, and you grab a few. We usually use about 3 sugar cubes, real sugar cubes from the supermarket. They actually act as a bait. You pour over about a teaspoon of pure gum turpentine over those 3 sugar cubes. Now, you do not saturate the whole 3. You have stacking them on top of one another, and so you've got they're sapped probably about 2 and a little bit of not quite the third one is saturated. Now, that's what it needs to be. You do not want to saturate the whole 3 of them. It has to have a little bit of pure sugar in there that actually bait. That is the bait to all those little micro things that you're trying to trap. You're killing them. You're eating this, and you actually, that tastes like a lolly, this pure gum turpentine. You eat it, and it tastes like a little bit like a lolly. You crunch it up. In your body, that is actually going to trap all those the mycotoxins, all those... Yes, they're good for parasites, they're good for fungus, and so they're going to trap those, and you'll kill them, and you'll just eliminate them. So that is a good one to get onto, pure gum turpentine. But as I said, you need to get that from Bunnings. How often do I take it? Well, look, you don't even need to take it that often. You could take it, probably for about 3 consecutive days. Then you just leave it go. How bad are you? That's the point. We probably take it once every maybe 3 months. Do we take it maybe once or twice, once every 3 months? That's it. And just take 1 dose of it.
Is there much die-off from that?
Depending how bad you are, yes, I agree. You need to check it. Can I tell you something? If you've got a die-off, I want you to take your charcoal with it. Remember, your charcoal is going to be counteract your die-off. So you need to make sure you take some charcoal with it. Yeah.
Can I ask, do you notice a difference after you've taken it?
Yes and no. I can't say for me, but I wasn't sick before I started, okay? But I do know, but we've been doing it for quite a while now.
And you've known other people that it's...
Oh, yeah. This is Dr. Jennifer Daniels, her protocol that she was talking about if you go on the internet, she was like a American doctor who was really pushing for, the old ways to do it, to help people, and this was pure gum turpentine. Now, there's another one which I want to talk to you, which not going to talk to you about today, but this is called sodium chlorite. And this, you mix this with hydrochloric acid and you can make chlorine dioxide solution. And this, like your Digger's pure gum turpentine, and this chlorine dioxide solution will hit fungus, it will hit parasites. This one also will help eliminate heavy metals. This one also helps eliminate Roundup. It is one of the best things, and plus also it will hit all viruses. So it hits all your any COVID or anything like that. So it doesn't matter what they've got in store for you, this is what you're going to need to have. So it will hit everything, right? So you need to know this and have this one ready and so I'm going to share with you another meeting how to make that, how to mix that up and make it and take it, because these are all you need to know. I used that. I had probably 2 years ago, I got shingles. And I took this, and honestly, I could not believe, and even my family could not believe how quickly the shingles left and how quickly they just took the pain. It took the pain away, just like that, complete pain, and I could not believe it. Actually, I should say I was even a little bit taken back how quickly it mended and how quickly the pain left for me too. Even though I expected it to happen, I was quite pleasantly surprised how quickly it did.
Is that one in our book, Kaye?
No, it's not. I've actually wanted to share, there is a lot of problems with how we need to talk about this one. I'm going to work out how we're going to do this, because every time you talk about this on the internet, you get restricted. And so I'm going to have to work out how we're going to do this one. But I want to share it with you. You need to know about it. Go on to, write this down, mmsdetox.com.au. You buy it online. mmsdetox.com.au. Okay, so what you got to, when you go on there, and if you're going to buy any, get yourself, it's called sodium chlorite with a T, which is actually salt and oxygen molecules. And you buy a bottle of hydrochloric acid. Both of those together are around about $24, $25. They're not like hugely expensive. But they can save your life. They literally will. And so get as much as you want. Yeah, I know. I'm just going to be careful with it, so yeah. So anyhow, that I'll just talk about that another time, right? Yep. Okay, so, and then just finishing off here, our next talk is on excitotoxins, the taste that kills. That's next Sunday. That's coming up Sunday, excitotoxins, the taste that kill. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm now ready to do, Marilyn, we want those two things from the fridge. Okay, Maria, can you hand these out, please? So what I'm going to do now, yes?
Would tinnitus be affected by fungus?
I can't hear you.
Tinnitus in the ears, ringing in the ears.
Possibly, yes. I would do that, yeah.
Did you want to do a question and answer or anything like that?
Not right at the moment, just yet. I want to do this first, the other one first, the round one. Now what I'm going to do here is, this is a gluten-free bread mix, okay? What I'm going to do, and I'm going to walk you through this, how I'm making this. I use 1 cup, and I'm using, take notice, I'm using buckwheat as a starter. Yeah, that's it here, thanks. Okay, 1 cup of buckwheat or brown rice flour. You can use either. I have used buckwheat, okay? And I always use buckwheat because I actually like it, okay? You use 1 cup of buckwheat, 1 cup of buckwheat buckwheat or brown rice flour, 1 cup of water, a half a cup or 1 cup of sourdough starter, and a teaspoon of organic brown sugar, organic sulfur for blackstrap molasses. Okay, so what I'm doing here, this is my mixture, right, that I'm going to share with you how I'm going to do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, this here is my starter, which normally doesn't look so messy as it looks now like that. I'll just keep it in front of the camera here. And the reason it's all that, because I've travelled down here, but I've usually used, and I like using a glass bowl, which I've used here. So what I've done here is I have raised this, I have mixed this starter. This is a sourdough starter in here. This is my, some people call it a leaven, but this is my sourdough starter. Now, it's actually touched the top of my lid here, so I'll just scrape that off here. So yes?
How did you create or make your sourdough starter?
I didn't create or make it, I bought it. It's already one that has been purchased. A lady from, I think it was from Western Australia, she made it, right? But so this is quite a powerful one, and it's not my own. But yeah, there are recipes. You can find out how you can do it yourself. But this one, I did it. Like I bought it already prepared. So what I'd usually do, these are like my bowls, which I use at home. Now, I have that. I'm going to divide, I'm going to keep half of this, and that is going to be my starting mix for my next batch. I'm always going to have to keep some. So I'm just going to keep that aside now. And what I'm going to do, so I'm going to halve this. I'm going to use a bowl here. That is going to be for my making up of my bread dough, which I'm going to make into some flat breads. So I'm just going to mix half of this here, about half of it. I just eyeball it. I don't exactly work out how much I'm going to use. But what I'm going to do here is, and I'd usually use the same bowl so I don't have to another messy bowl that I'm going to do. Now what I'm going to do is put a teaspoon of sugar in. That is my sugar. I want a cup of water. Just a cup of water. And I've got a whisk, and I'm just going to whisk this. I just make sure that the camera can see it. Now, then I'm going to add about a cup of buckwheat flour. Yes, you can use brown rice flour. So what I'm doing here is I'm just mixing this, and I'm mixing this into a batter. Sometimes it comes out a little bit stiffer, doesn't matter. Sometimes I don't always measure, I eyeball it. Now, there is my mixture here. So what I do is I put it into a fresh bowl, and I let that sit on my side, on my bench. I let that sit for probably 4 or 5 hours. And what will happen, that will raise, and you'll see it'll aerate a little bit, and it'll actually rise up. And if it rises too much, it doesn't matter. It'll just knock it down again, which I just did before. Now that is my next starter, ready for my next batch. So I've got that ready, so I don't need to worry about that. Now this is the mixture that I'm going to make up, which I'm going to let you have a taste of, and I'm going to share with you, and we're going to just have a taste of some of these flatbreads in a little while. So what I'm going to do, this is my mixture that I'm going to put in a teaspoon of salt, I use Celtic salt. I'm going to use a tablespoon of ground flaxseed. I tell you what, a lot of this gluten-free cooking now is using a lot of ground flaxseed and psyllium seeds. Okay, there you are, grounds. And as I said, I just eyeball it. A tablespoon of psyllium. Now, about a cup and a half of water. And I'll just, now I put in, normally I put in a little bit of, couple of spoons of olive oil. You could, that's optional. You don't have to put in there, but I've actually left my olive oil behind. I don't have that with me. So you could, I would, if I used coconut, I would melt it. Now, what I do is I mix up any combination of gluten-free flours in there. I sometimes I've put in a little bit of buckwheat here. I've got some tapioca. I've got sorghum. I use besan. I use maize flour. I use all sorts. Anything goes. You could just use anything that you wanted to put in here. Obviously, they all have a different taste. And so when I just mix this up, Now, the thicker that I make it, it'll thicken a little bit, but then sometimes I make it even a bit thicker, depending what I want to use it for. If I want to use this as a pizza dough, you need to have it thicker. You can have it like, for instance, this now is a batter consistency. Can you see that? Not a thick batter, just sort of a little bit, but I would like it a little bit thicker than that. So I put a bit more flour in. I'll make it a little bit thicker than that. There you are. That should be about right. And that will, then I'll let that sit on my bench for the same amount of time as that. And then I'll use it, and I'll show you what it makes up now. Now look at that. That's nice. Usually from Just Foods, but I actually have my own flour press. I've got a grinder, and I can, like I've got buckwheat, and I usually use them like that, but usually you Just Food. And so I just tip, this is my little, now normally it fits in there. That's it. Not really a...
Can you use any sourdough starter?
Yes, you could, but if you wanted to, I would, but as I say, I've got that, and it works well. Now that there, I just let that sit on my bench. Now this is the point. You leave this rise, and you let both of them rise on your bench for probably about 5, look, in the winter maybe 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours. Summer it's a lot quicker. Then you put both of them in the fridge. Keep them in the fridge after they've done that first initial rise. Then, as I said, you put it back in the fridge. But what I've got here, got a big mess here. I've already got some made up here, which this here, see that there is already risen. There is leaven in it. If you saw it there, it's quite, you can see it. It's got quite a lot of holes in it. Now that is what I'm going to put into my sandwich press to make I'll just put that on there. So what we're going to do is I'll just grab one of these spoons there. And I'll just let the sandwich press warm up, and I'll show you how I make the flatbreads. But this is, you can make little ones, you can make large ones, you can make them fatter, thinner. What I've also done is sometimes I've put mixed fruit in them. You could put them, have like with the the fruit through them. They're very nice, really are. But, quite frankly, I make this, and I have this ready in my fridge. I made a larger one because I needed to have a little bit more that I could share with you all. But once you have it, that will keep in the fridge for probably about 10 days. Make sure, I really would like to replace it every week, but if it doesn't, 10 days is fine. You'll come back and you'll think, oh yeah, it's still okay. It's still all right. I can still use it. And if you don't want it, there's only yourself at home, maybe halve the whole section. You don't need such a large quantity. But it will keep. And you could even, afterwards, you can even freeze some of it. I've even tried freezing it and it works.
The backup or after
But I've used it after I've raised it first. I have always raised it first before I put it into the fridge. I always have that. There you are. Now just... Sometimes I have it a little bit... Yeah. In a minute, yeah. Yep. I'll just do this one first, Marilyn, then you can take it out. So what I've done there is I've put 4 on there. And what I do, if you want it thicker, sometimes I just actually put a tea towel and I just rub my hand across, rolling it around there, and I thin it out a bit, depending how thick you want it. But let's just... Oh, where's Marilyn gone? What I wanted to have is a plate. I've forgotten to bring a plate out. Just a plate for the ones that I've already cooked. So and then if you have flatbreads like this, and it doesn't matter even if it's gluten-free flatbread, after you've cooked it and you let it sit for a day or so, any gluten-free, it just tastes like cardboard. And I just have these and I just cook one for myself when I want it. And it's ideal. Yeah. Ideal. If you just use it as you need it. I don't go ahead and I make heaps make them up ahead of time. I don't need them ahead of time. Thank you, Peter. Because it is much nicer to eat them fresh. And if you want them thinner, you can actually press your sandwich press out, and you can make them into a wrap. If you want them a little bit thicker. And depending on, once you get used to this, because this is probably a little bit thicker. I usually make them a little bit thicker than that. Like I can actually roll my hand into them. But then sometimes I do them like this. It's like whichever way it goes. I've done both ways.
Did you use a fry pan instead of...
Yes, I'd say you could. Yep. Look, try it. Yeah. I do like the sandwich press. It's so much easier. Yeah. A little bit more. And it's a little bit, and so you just have, many times, just like if it's just to have one slice of bread, you don't need to have a special slice. You just have this ready, and you just go and take a spoon out and I'm just make up one little piece for myself, and that's it. Then I put that back in the fridge, and it's ready. And you know what? If you said to me, how long does it take to make? Initially, you have to have this made up. But if you said to me, oh, look, I've got this made up, it would be lucky to be made 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm finished.
And if you made it into a loaf, how big would your loaf be?
Okay, so if I made this into a loaf, I would actually have it ready, let it raise in the loaf tin, and it would be just under, and then I'd have to work out where I'm going to put it into the oven, which is like, I would do that, and I would put it into a tin. I wouldn't put it into a glass bowl. I would put it into a tin. I would allow it to rise a little bit, and then I'd work out how long it's going to take me, because you can't put it into the oven before it's fully risen. It needs to have a little bit of kick in it before you put it in the oven.
Yeah, you don't knock it down and
No.
let it rise again.
You could. I generally don't. What I've done is, because there's just me, I really find it so much easier to do it this way. I don't worry about knocking it down and rising it around and doing it up again. This works so well for me that I don't need to want to do it the other way.
Would you have to grease the tin first?
Yep.
Is this sandwich press greased?
Pardon?
Sorry, is the sandwich press greased?
No, it wasn't. It's just,
Doesn't have to.
no.
And what sort of topping would you put on that?
Something like hummus, which I've got some hummus here for you to try.
And is that homemade too?
Yeah. Just hummus, chickpeas and tahini and lemon and a bit of onion and salt, garlic, yeah. See? Now they're thinner than they normally come out. I'll make it a little bit thicker this time. Then I'll let Marilyn. I won't flatten that down, I'll just let it. Yeah. And it obviously takes a few minutes to cook. Any more questions? But it's not, as I said, it's nice. You can have it as a, if you wanted to have a little bit of jam on there, or, like almond butter and jam. Oh, yummy. Or you could put, I've made them flat and I've just rolled them out. And, you get used to knowing what to put into them. Sometimes they will come a lot, and sometimes I'll sprinkle a little bit more salt on them and have them a little bit saltier. Maybe put some herbamere on them. I just change them, and however what the whim goes, and, and you just change whatever you want to do. Oh, you've got a microphone, okay. So, any questions? Peter is my microphone behind you. Peter is my microphone boy today.
Just talking about fungal infections, what about pure honey? Is that acceptable?
Can I tell you that while it is, if you've got fungal problems, you just don't want to even be having pure honey. You need to clear completely. I actually know somebody who had a fungal infection who was so severe, I thought that that person was going to die. And they went on the antifungal diet for 18 months and their life has just changed, completely turned around. They stuck with it. And they went on. And once you do that, once you realise, all of a sudden you get your life back again, you realise, I have to be very careful. So for me personally, I didn't have to go such a dramatic, but this lady was very close to, I believe she could have very, very easily have died. So she went on this antifungal diet, and that was just like the change of her life, completely. But there was absolutely no. And she was so careful by watching what she put into her diet, into her mouth. Even now, she's very careful.
Sorry, excuse me, is the Excitotoxins lecture going to be repeated on a Tuesday or is it only on Sunday?
It's only on Sunday. That's this coming up Sunday, yeah. If you want to watch it, you just have to watch it on the online. I'm sorry, but yeah, on YouTube, yeah. So it's coming up. Ralph is the guy who's doing it for me, but has a little bit of trouble because he lives out of town and they have very poor internet connection where he lives, and it's not as easy to download things as he wanted to. And yeah, so, but he knows that we're all waiting for it, so he'll just. Yeah, okay, so he wants to do it on DVD too.
That's if you've got a DVD player.
Yes?
A question about,
Just hold on.
You spoke about too much sugar in fruit.
Yeah.
So what is your recommended amount of fruit to have in your daily diet?
Depending how much you can handle. Personally for us, I think probably maybe about 2 pieces of fruit of a morning is pretty much as I should handle. And if I go over that, I certainly know. And the worst part of it is when you go along and you decide you find, oh, look at that. You go into the supermarket and you say, oh, look, there's a bag of grapes. Oh, I think I'll get them. And then you go, oh, yes, I'll get that. And all of a sudden you get too overloaded, and we really have to get off that. See? Now, these, as I said, they go different every time you do them. See, they're very, yeah. Sometimes I can make them thicker, sometimes thinner. Marilyn's in there. She's cooking the rest of them. Any other questions?
Are they hard enough to dip into a dip?
Yes.
Are they hard enough to break up and dip into a dip? Lovely.
They're like the roti bread, like the old-fashioned roti bread. Yeah. And you may want a little bit more salt in them. Some people like a little bit, depending what you're having them with. Like if I'm having them with something and I think, I think I need a bit more salt. But they're not like they've got a little bit of, not like, I've cooked them and they've been pretty, without that leaven in them, you would find them to, how many have you got out there?
Another 4 in.
Here, do you want to take some more out? You can keep going, keep doing them.
Kaye, I have a question about the starter.
Yes.
If you're not going to use it within a week in the fridge, does that get thrown out or can you
I would,
put
good
it to sleep
idea.
at some
What I
stage?
would do, if I wasn't going to use that within a fridge, within a week, I would make it a little bit thicker and I would use less. And then, yes, I would, if I wasn't going to, depending how long it is, I haven't had to throw any out yet, but I would if I had to. But I would probably halve it, then just toss it and just throw it out, because it's just flour and water, and you just do want to have it nice and fresh. And that's got a lot of power in it that it actually will kick up. It's a very good starter. It's not like one that's lost its flat, it's pretty flat.
Can you get it through the health food shops?
No. I bought this online. I did a course. I did a bread making course. With the bread making course, I found it quite challenging, because everything is measured out. It says take 230 grams of flour and measure in 125 mils of water and all that. And while I appreciate that, quite frankly, you know what? I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm just going to go through, and you know what? I have found that it doesn't matter. If I put more flour in, it still works. If I put less flour in, it still works. It doesn't matter what happens. It still works the same. It's just got a little bit different a consistency.
So who do we look up to buy?
You're getting some here. You're getting some handed out for you here. Marilyn's got, we've got a bag of them. All of you are going to get a bag of them, a bag of sourdough starter. Peter, can we go and get it out the fridge? Yes? Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. I have a sample for you ready to go. You're not only going to taste some. Yes, you get a bag in your...
Sorry, can I just ask, you were about to say that without the leavening, if you tried to cook it...
It would become quite like a biscuit, like a cracker. Okay, it doesn't have that softness to it. Okay, and that's what this has. This has got a softness to it. It's, even though it's still quite thinnish. Here it is. You can hand them out. Actually, hand them out. Now, what I've done is they need to be sealed shut, all of you. Just hand them to the ladies and they can seal their own shut. Now, the reason I didn't shut them, because they did need to breathe. Now, when you get this home, pop it straight in the fridge and feed it if you can, pretty soon. If you haven't got the chance to feed it today, that's all right, but within a day or so, feed it.
And by feeding it, do you mean...
Give it some new flour. And it needs a little bit of... it needs to have a little bit of sugar. Yeah. So what I did is you must, and remember, if you follow and read through the instructions, the moment you seal it, it needs air, it needs oxygen, right? So that that's why, I bagged them up last night, so I didn't want to have them, I wanted to let them have a little bit. So that's your culture. Okay, now when you get that, you'll find the instructions on that. What to do when you've been given a small amount, about 2 tablespoons or 1/4 cup. Halfway down your page, it says, place in a glass bowl with 1/2 cup of water and 1/2 cup of buckwheat flour and 1/2 teaspoon of organic sugar. Whisk and allow to rise 4 to 5 hours. Then add another 1 cup of water and organic starter. Whisk and add buckwheat flour. So that means the second time you'd get to that amount of starter. If you don't want it, you only want a little bit, just do it in a small amount. Yes?
I've actually used a shower cap if I didn't have a
lid.
Yes.
If I didn't have a container with a lid to put it in the fridge, like
Yes.
a glass one, I'd use my glass bowl with a shower cap on it.
Great idea, yeah. I'm a person, I love glass, using glass in the fridge, but you're right there. It does not need a tight lid, okay? If you put an airtight lid on there, you'll lose it. You need to allow it to breathe, okay? Now that will breathe because it's not airtight, even though it is sort of airtight, but it's not. This one here, it's the same. That is not airtight, but it will breathe. But you don't want one that's airtight, that's going to seal out, and you could tip it up and it wouldn't leak out. Yeah.
Sorry, once we've activated it for 6 hours or whatever, 5 hours, can we freeze it and it will keep? I know.
Yes and no. If you do that, I want you to experiment, because I did this years ago and I knew that you can freeze it. Years ago, I froze it and I also dehydrated some. So I did both. But do not do all of if you're going to have it and you want to experiment, do half of your starter, because if you lose the lot, it's gone, okay? You're going to have to hunt around for it again. Yeah. Oh, I dehydrated it. I made it very runny, and then I just dehydrated it in a dehydrator. But it was very runny at the first, and so then it crumbled up quite nicely as I...
So what portion of that would you use to restart?
Say that again?
What portion of that would you to do it to restart?
You would have to be very careful to have to rebuild it up and build it up quite slowly. I can remember doing that, and it took me, you're sort of doing only like cups, that much. Like, for instance, if I've got a little bit of starter, I'm only going to maybe about 2 tablespoons of flour in there, in a cup or something. And I had to build up the volume because I didn't have much volume there.
And did it work then?
Yes, it did. Yeah, it did. But that was quite a few years ago. And that wasn't using this exact starter culture. That was using a different starter culture. But I believe it's the same principle. Yeah. So just remember where you yeah, it'll work. Yes?
Can you use like an organic coconut sugar or...
Just hold on.
Sorry. Can you use an organic coconut sugar or different sugar other than your refined type sugar?
Yep. I'm using... It needs that little spoon of sugar in there as a food to start. It is not really for any nutrition in there. It's just for feeding that starter. That's the food that it wants to use. That's why I don't put any sugar in this one, what we're going to eat. Yeah. But you could use any sugar. I think on the instructions it's talked about using organic sulfur-free blackstrap molasses. You see, that gives you a different flavour.
Or even honey?
Yes, yes. You could use any of those for your... Yeah. Yeah, I would use... I tend more so to use the... Because it's... Yes, I think you could. Yeah. But always remember to keep a little bit back for next starter, for the next... when you've never done this before, it's a little bit daunting, but once you've done it a few times, all of a sudden it becomes, oh, yeah, that's easy. There's no problem there. So any other questions before we will call it a day? And before you go, you can have a taste, definitely. Marilyn will be cooking, and you can have a taste of what they are like. Okay, so look, I think we'll leave it there. as far as the recording goes. So if you're unable to make it on next Sunday, but remember we're going to do excitotoxins, the taste that kills, really important because I found this out years and years ago, and I have been carefully watching my labels for so many years, and yet most people have no idea that what's in this. Yeah. No idea what's happening there, what they're eating. Okay, so we'll leave that. We'll just before we just hold on, Maria. Yes? Yes, this coming Sunday afternoon at 2 to 4, we've got the one excitotoxins, the taste that kills here in the church hall. That's this coming Sunday at 2 to 4. Okay, so we'll just leave the recording there, and if we'll let Maria, she's going to let you have a taste of, then you can, yeah, okay, you can just help, yeah.